And this is the huge benefit of having long-term standing relationships with your trade partners, because they should know better and they should know how they should handle this. Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today is our Q&A session. And the question that was submitted by Mike Weaver and Brad Robinson, shout out to them, was what is the right time to steer a client from a renovation to a new home? That's a great question. And I'd say for the last 20 years, this has sort of evolved for me. I've done a lot of remodels and I've done a lot of new homes. And so obviously people have us come out to their home. Typically living in Minneapolis, there's a lot of older homes, and I'll go out there with an open mind. They think it's a remodel. And sometimes you drive up and you know immediately this is not a remodel, either based on the condition of the home or based on the condition of what the client is asking for. In some ways, it gets really easy when there's just a very clear delineation, like either price point or the things that they're asking. And one simple kind of litmus test that I've done a number of times is if the homeowner can't tell me what they're keeping, that's not a remodel. That's a tear down. That's a new home. And what I mean by that is, you'll have a client that'll come out and they'll say, we want a main floor owner suite, want a new mudroom, we want a back hall area where the kids can have some homework areas. We want a sunroom, a new kitchen. We also want to do we want to pop the top and do a second story addition as well. And you're essentially not saving anything. And that is just a pretty easy example of that's not a remodel. Now, I will say that with an asterisk that sometimes in some cities, in some areas, that can be a remodel if the governing body is so stringent on new home requirements, or perhaps it's an architectural significant home. Or there's something that there's a heritage piece of it that they are really in love with their home, but it might not make financial sense, but the client is on board with that because they bought that home knowing that the home was something that they wanted to keep and restore. So setting that aside, which is a totally different type of clientele, it's really up to us to educate the client on what they're doing. And so usually what I do is I'll start with a budget. What is your desired goal? Inevitably, people, and it's really no fault of their own. I mean, they're not builders, they're not remodelers. How would they know exactly what it's going to cost? That's why we're there. And they'll say, in this example, we want a $300,000 to $500,000 budget. And that's a great budget. I mean, that's a huge, huge budget, right? But to do all of the things that I just said, to add a second story, to redo the entire main level. And one of the problems with a remodel that I often tell our clients is if we can't contain the remodel, if we can't contain the actual space, then it becomes really a whole house remodel, which is fine. That's honestly what we're the best at. The bigger the remodel, probably the more efficient we become as a company. My favorite remodels are a whole house remodel. Sometimes we're doing one right now where the main level, we're refiguring a lot of the layouts and taking down some walls and opening up some areas. But I would say it's probably a 30% remodel and a 70% refresh. And what I mean by that is the refresh is like new carpet, gutting the bathrooms, but really not changing them, updating it to, it's a 80s, 90s home and they want it to look like a beautiful, 2024 home. And they're not doing any addition. That is clearly a remodel. I think when you start getting into adding spaces, one of my kind of guiding principles that has probably been the easiest way to, in that first meeting, really get down to brass tacks on how to steer the client is if you do more than 3 remodels, and I'll define what that means in a minute, it is not a remodel, it is a tear down. And what I refer to a remodel as like a large scope of work or project. So a kitchen is one remodel, and really a kitchen usually is a main floor remodel because usually you're opening up some walls, you're affecting, probably adding a bathroom if it's an older home, you're, touching a lot of trim, you're probably installing all new floors, and it's really hard to start and stop. And before you know it, you've sort of updated the whole main level, which is fine. Yeah, we want to do a design that's very intentional and that makes it look like it's always been there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why people are even calling us in the first place, is to give them this kind of advice. So that's one remodel. Another remodel would be any sort of addition. So let's use this example. Let's say someone calls me and says, I want to do a kitchen. Okay, that's one remodel. It's a main floor remodel. And we also want to do a sunroom addition and a mudroom addition. Okay, great. If we can combine those two areas, that's only going to count to me as like one remodel in this, three remodel analogy. So I've got the main floor, kitchen, and whole main level, and then I have this actual addition, which is foundation work. I'm adding new square footage to this property. Could be basement, second level as well, but the rest of the house is remaining untouched. And then maybe the third remodel is, by the way, I also want to do either another addition on a different part of the house that's not tied into the existing foundation, that doesn't, or the other addition. So now we're starting to get a jigsaw puzzle together, or maybe it's a rambler or main level home. And they're like, by the way, we also want a second story. And I've had this happen actually many times. So let me get this straight. You want a second story? You want to add a second story. So let's call it 3 bedrooms upstairs. You want to add a sunroom and a mudroom. You want to redo the entire main level. I mean, you can see it when I'm articulating this. Like, what are you actually saving? Like, there's nothing. You're maybe saving the basement. That's it. And even that, you're probably got to open up some of the ceiling to get new work. Plus, if you're adding all these new additions, actual additions with foundation work, most likely you are going to want to access them. They're not crawl spaces. So now we have to reconfigure whatever your existing basement is. It is going to be cheaper, and you're going to get a much better end product by tearing that home down. The hardest part is some of these homes, like they're pretty decent. Like the family has just outgrown what that house is. And that's the unfortunate part. And I shouldn't say unfortunate part. That's just, it is the reality of it. And so there are certain parts of town. I'm sure everyone has their little, buzzy little towns that, young families move to, and they quickly, they have a couple children, and before they know it, they've outgrown the home and they don't know what to do. I'll take like Linden Hills in Minneapolis, for example. I've lived there for 20 some years, within a mile or two of Linden Hills. I've had 3 homes there. And, I speak for myself. The first house that we did there, it was actually out of college. We did a small remodel, no big deal. Second home, this is where I learned this 3 rule lesson. It would have been better off. Now the home is gorgeous and we did amazing work, but we probably would have been better off tearing the house down. I broke my rule. I did a whole house remodel or update. I did a rear addition and a owner suite off the top, and I did a new garage off the back. Um, that would have been borderline, not even borderline. In hindsight, it would have been better to just tear the whole thing down and build new. Now I'm very happy with the work that we did there. It's obviously gorgeous. It was my own home. I love what we did. But oddly enough, that home has sold like 4 times. It keeps selling. It keeps going up in value. So there still is a place, but understanding that like at the time, it would have been a better value to build the new home. I'm thinking back now, however many years ago that house was. I want to say 2017, maybe. I think that remodel off the top of my head was like 5 or 600,000. I'm thinking back at that time, a new house would have probably cost 1 million. So it would have cost, 300 grand more to build a new house. So it would have been more expensive. It would have been a more valuable house. It would have been worth more. Um, but I didn't have the money at the time. And so that was what I needed to do for our family. And so this is really, you basically, as a business owner, as a builder, can kind of share these examples. In this case, I was able to share a very personal example and relate to my young family clients and say, well, I struggled with this exact same thing. And if I had it to do all over again, I probably would have torn it down. And a lot of times clients, they get paralyzed when they don't know what to do with this remodel. And so we're just trying to give them options. And I've seen kind of everything happen under the sun. They either go ahead with a remodel, sometimes they will sell the home and they'll either find a bigger home or they'll build a new home with us, or they'll do something that the home is more suited to a remodel because maybe their asks are just so big, or maybe they're in an area that doing a, 5, 6, $800 million remodel just doesn't make financial sense. They'd be better off moving to a different community. And this is really the impetus. This is really the lightning rod that causes them to make that decision. I found recently too that it is hard to get people to change their mind or to really feel a sense of urgency um, without an underlying cause. And, obviously the new ones are, you're newly married, maybe you have a young family, your family's growing. So most people are building a home to accommodate their growing family. I've had some where of many that are the opposite end. They're empty nesters. They're now downsizing and they want a smaller home. And anyway, I think the bottom line is it's really hard to build for somebody or to get someone to move ahead if they don't have some sort of underlying urgency, especially in the current climate we're in with interest rates and elections and all these kinds of cycle. I think that's why you see a lot of people on the fence. I mean, if you have to move, like you're obviously moving, you have to move. And so the question is how great is that urgency?
Lake Society magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
The next question is, why is it important to control who communicates with homeowners during the build? This is a great question, and I have failed at this many times, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. And I think the intent of this question is, um, we really invite our personal clients in to be part of our quote work family. And so we have a very warm relationship. And it's what I want to do. This is how I've constructed the business because this is how I want to work with my clients. I don't like it to just to be a transaction. For better or for worse, that's what I've chosen to do. And so because it's very warm and it's inviting, I tend to lead a lot of the communication because my name's on the sign. It does limit me a little bit in terms of scaling, obviously, but I interact a lot with the client. So I think as I've gotten, let's say, as the homes, if we get too many at one time, obviously I want the project manager or the project coordinator leading some of that communication. But I think the real intent of this is, sometimes clients, if they don't like the answer they're hearing, they will bypass the build team, the project manager, and they'll go straight to the sub. So I've had it in my career. I think anyone who's built long enough has probably experienced this. And this is the huge benefit of having long-term standing relationships with your trade partners because they should know better and they should know how to do with how they should handle this. However, you've had a client, well, they'll maybe go to a job site where the cabinet maker is working. And obviously the cabinet maker is very professional and he's very warm and inviting. And of course he's interacted with the client. So he knows them. And of course he's going to talk with them. But then the client might say, hey, so-and-so, would you, how much is it to add one more closet? When they start asking about costs, that's when you really need to make sure that your subcontractors are aligned with you. And to me, even on cost plus jobs, the trade partner should never be discussing price with our clients without myself or without our team members present, because you don't want to get into a he said she said situation and then later you have something, that maybe the client, you hear these crazy stories. I've never had this happen where a client will tell a cabinet maker, he'll say, yeah, it's going to be $1,000 for a pantry closet cabinet add-on. So he does it, and then the builder gets an invoice from the cabinet maker and he submits it, and the client's like, I'm not paying that. Where's the paper trail? And either because the builder never knew about it. Obviously the right protocol is the cabinet maker could say, you know what, I will run that by the build team. They will present the information to you. And then once it's approved, then we'll run through our normal protocol. And, that's the point of having like Builder Trend or having these online portals where clients can manage their change orders, but it's also for the build team and for the trade partners to be protected. It's for everybody. Most of our clients, we've been very fortunate, have been very straight shooting and, they just want a really nice home. Sometimes they obviously are fishing. And, a lot of our clients are business owners, and it's nothing wrong with that. It's, they've got a little twinkle in their eye, but you sort of need an experienced hand at the helm to sort of help redirect some of these questions and then bring it back to you. And, so, I've had clients, same deal with communication, light fixtures. I really like a certain light fixture company. It's all handmade. And I've had a client say, oh, we know you love them. We're just going to go buy them directly. And we're just going to put them, where we want them and we just want you to hang them. What they're really saying is we don't want to pay you your GC markup or your project management fee, and we just want, but we want this anyway. We want the benefit of your professionalism, the benefit of your brand, the benefit of your relationships, but we don't want to pay you for it, or we don't want to pay you more than we think we should. And that is a tricky nuance of a thing. I spoke about that, I think, last week in our Q&A about the strength of relationships with your vendors and why it's important to have them. And so again, that takes experience. I think that takes it's a bit of a nuance. You have to, the tact, making a point without making an enemy with your client, because you want them to get what they want, but you also have to respectfully sort of say no and redirect them down the communication path that is accurate. And I won't go into it at length this one on lighting because I did that last week. But another one would be with communication. Why we keep a bi-weekly meeting with our clients. So what that means is every 2 weeks we meet with the entire team, and we'll make the call that week of who's involved. So we're doing a remodel right now, and every 2 weeks on Friday morning at 9 a.m. we meet with a client, and we'll cancel the meeting 2 days ahead of time if we have nothing to discuss. Sometimes there's downtime, especially on a remodel. Maybe we're waiting for permitting, and maybe there's nothing to discuss, or maybe it's during drywall or painting or whatever, and we can just wait. But we'll say we'll have the architect on it, we'll have the interior designer on it, we'll have maybe we want to bring a cabinet guy in because he wants to get cabinets approved, or maybe we want to bring in a landscaper. We just have it on everyone's calendar, and then it leaves our team up to managing it. I have found that to be extremely helpful at controlling the narrative of communication, especially our higher end clients that are very busy and are getting inundated with emails. Our team wants to build their home, but if they can't get a hold of the client or their attention, that's a problem. And we also don't want to just be kind of, like a woodpecker, just kind of pecking the client with questions all the time. It'd be nice to sort of assemble all your questions and then every 2 weeks meet with them and say, hey, here's the list of all the things we need to cover. And can we get your feedback on that? And we also try to create an agenda where we'll send it to them the day before, not too much time, but a day or two before, so they know kind of what we're going to be talking about. So at least it's on their mind. That has been extremely helpful. I wish I would have done that earlier on in my career. I mean, I certainly met with my clients for, cabinet walkthroughs, electrical walkthroughs. We did all of that, but I sort of like the steady cadence. I find that not only does it help the client understand when they're going to meet with you, it sort of cuts down on the emails and the phone calls. Not that they can't call us or email us, of course they can, but it, in some ways, by you assembling all your questions and waiting for that time, they sort of do the same. And so then those meetings become very productive, and they also are very essential. It also is always pretty much better to be in person for a lot of these discussions because you can get through a lot more information. And so I've really appreciated those. Those meetings. I would say another thing that's been really helpful in terms of communication is every Friday we have our project manager send just a little note. There's in Builder Trend like a daily log, and it'll just say we do a recap and a look ahead. So this week there was framing and there was some electrical work. Some of the HVAC was installed. Next week we're going to need sign offs on tile or whatever it might be. And this is what we did this week. This is what we're doing next week. And it's nice because clients are so busy, especially if our clients are remote or far away from the project. Or we had one project where the Mrs. was here, but the Mr. was in Oregon. And so his only updates were the pictures that we were posting and then these recaps that were in there. And I think that was really crucial for us, getting the job, but also keeping him informed on what was happening because he wasn't there. And, we live in Minnesota. It doesn't seem like there's nearly as many vacation homes as say, down in the South. And so I could see, if you're a Southern builder or if you're in a community where people build vacation homes like the mountains or a ski town, man, having a remote software that you can have your clients access all the pictures, schedule, all this stuff obviously is done through Builder Trend, which is what we use. But there's a number of other ways you can do this as well. I just find that it's nice to have it kind of in a one-stop shop. We're excited to announce that we've opened up another Curious Collective. For the last year, we've had the Curious Builder Collective. We now have the Curious Builder Collective for designers. The first ones will be happening in September. All the details are going to be on our website. We have 30 spots available. Half of them have already filled. We additionally have 8 spots left in the Builder Collective. If you're interested in getting together in small groups of 9 with local Minneapolis-based builders and designers in separate groups and talking about your business, talking about your brands, asking those questions that you wish you could ask another business owner, then this is the place for you. Details can be found at the CuriousBuilderPodcast.com. I'm trying to think of what else would be helpful in terms of communication. I actually, this is communication is really important. I actually put it in my contract that our clients cannot text us for um, for orders, for change orders, or direct lines of communication to make changes to their home. Texting to me is for, hey, we're running 5 minutes late, or can you meet for coffee to discuss this, that, and another thing, or hey, here's a picture, because texts work really good for pictures. You got to be a little careful with that too, because it's harder to track those pictures. I'd still prefer them in an email, and we also set the hours. I don't want clients or my subs, our promise to you is, we're not going to bother you on nights and weekends, because guess what? Our people have families and teams too. They need to protect their time so that they can show up Monday refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to go to work and work on your home. And so we need that mutual respect that the client would have, for us, just like we'll have for them. But they can always fire off an email. One of the few things I've done a very good job of is, I do not check my email nights and weekends. I found a long time ago in my career that, if I check my email right before I go to bed, especially if it was, a specific client, or it was just sort of triggering. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it would affect my sleep. It would be on my subconscious. And like, you don't need that. You're going to sleep. Like, you need to go to sleep and wake up the next day ready to go. Check your email then. Don't check your email right before you go to bed. That's a terrible idea. And so, and then same with the weekends. If you spend, even if you don't respond to your client, but you're thinking about their email all weekend, have you really taken the weekend off? And I think it's really important to establish boundaries. I've spoken about that many times in the podcast, but one of my favorite quotes that you probably have heard me hear me say a number of times is, boundaries create freedom, but they really, really, really work. Maybe in our next Q&A, I'll talk a little bit about sauna camp and boot camp, which are going to be very much in alignment with with these boundaries, creating freedom. So that's my answer to those two questions today. Join us on Monday for our regular interview episode, and next Thursday for our Q&A. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at CuriousBuilderPodcast.com.